Let's talk about this and welcome back our panel. Republican strategist Erin Perini, also back with us, Deputy Managing Editor of Red State, Kira Davis. So I don't know about you ladies, but I was shocked to find out that, why would Major League Baseball be supporting, they call it gender-affirming care, but we're often talking about these very dangerous drugs that at least we don't know enough about, and we're talking about life-altering surgery, Kira, for kids that can't get tattoos, let alone they can change their gender?
I can't even believe that we have to have this conversation. I'm the mother of a daughter, and I'm supremely frustrated with this conversation. I know what MLB thinks they're doing. I know that these teams think that they're supporting pride. They think they're supporting the gay community. And because the branding has been so excellent on this, the T in LGBT doesn't belong with LGB, and they've managed to take over that designation and take over that brand. And so they're right now, these child mutilators, these are child abusers. If you think it's okay to give a healthy 12-year-old girl puberty blockers and cut off her breasts and take out her uterus in the name of trying to be something that she cannot be, which is the opposite gender, that's child abuse. And these people have traded on the goodwill that many gay activists have engendered from the American population over years and years of work and branding and all that sort of thing. They're trading on that, and they're trading the lives of our kids. This is child abuse. MLB should stay far away from this. And in fact, I think Americans need to be heard. This is our national pastime. We're the silent majority here. We're talking about a small sliver of people that the MLB is catering to right now. So let's do the same thing.
And I think it's because, here, what you talked about, it's because they're afraid of being called transphobic. Everyone's afraid of being called transphobic, so they get on board with this stuff. And I don't think they think about or thought through the consequences.
They need to be afraid of being called groomers.
Yeah, and I'm a mom too, and I think, we saw a story with Boston Children's Hospital completely trying to backpedal that they were pushing this when the videos were produced by them. It had their logo in it, and Erin, that's part of it too. It's like they put it out there, MLB, trying to appease, virtue signal, whatever. But we know there are serious ramifications. And when you call these major hospitals on and say, hey, what about the FDA saying there's brain swelling in 6 kids and they have to now put on a warning label? Everyone wants to drop it and say, oh, we're not doing it. Well, you are. And this report clearly shows they are.
That's right. There's a level of corporate responsibility here that I would give advice to any corporation and say you need to be very careful and very cognizant of who you're giving your dollars to. And if I was Major League Baseball, I would be more focused on what I'm doing internally than externally. Because let's look at the stone cold facts of Major League Baseball. Of the approximately 5,000 jobs that existed in 2020 that were baseball operations jobs, 225 of them were held by women. And how many women were general managers of baseball teams? One woman. And she is the Miami Marlins general manager, thanks in part to Derek Jeter, who worked with her for years when he was a New York Yankee. But it took her 30 years to get that job versus men in that industry who can be a 20, 30, talk about Theo Epstein, if we want to talk about Boston, a wonder kid, and become a general manager. If baseball wants to better America, they should start looking at themselves and how unfairly their entire industry treats people that can't play on the field the way that they have their athletes play. MLB needs to look inside instead of outside, because every time they try and do any woke ideology stuff, like when they tried to move the All-Star game out of Georgia because of voting rights, and then they moved it to Colorado, where voting is harder than it is in Georgia. It's backwards. They need to pay more attention to themselves than everybody else.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was ridiculous too. And there was also another massive missed opportunity by Major League Baseball. I remember calling several franchises trying to get interviews with players who are from Venezuela. There's a pretty big Venezuelan contingent in Major League Baseball, and this was when that country was falling apart, and there was talk about supporting the freedom of the people and pushing for democracy. Democrats they're so concerned about democracy, but nobody at that time wanted to talk about what was going on in Venezuela. You could not find a Major League Baseball team willing to put their players out there to talk about the importance of democracy or anything like that. That was disappointing. Let's also talk too about Time Magazine. In our gender studies lesson of the day, they are featuring genderqueer author Amia Kobabe. You might know her from her pornographic writing and her EIR, her ear pronouns. Time Magazine talking about that. But before we go any further, apparently that refers to the process of coming out as non-binary or asexual. And we have this genderqueer book. It's being pushed, Kira, on school districts all over the country. And Time Magazine, all about it, promoting her, obviously not too concerned about this grooming trend that we see.
No, again, this is just, groomers trading on the goodwill that the LGBT activist wing has engendered over the years. Look, you can see my signs back here. I'm running for school board. Here's the thing. None of this is going to change. These people are going to keep wiggling their way into the education of our children. None of it's going to change until we change things locally. So these conversations are supremely frustrating, but I am seeing people stand up and say, no, no more. So if parents are feeling frustrated and scared that this stuff is coming to you, and it is, I live in a conservative district and it's here already in our schools, then you need to show up at those school board meetings. You need to get angry. You need to get loud. Don't think about how other people are going to view you or look at you poorly. They're going to look at you poorly anyway because they don't like you being in control of your own child. They want to be in control of your child. So get to those meetings and run for school board or support the people who are. We're going to change this locally, and then Time Magazine will change their tune.
God bless you, Kira, for staying in California and fighting the fight there.
We need you. We need you there. In Florida, we just had primaries, and the school board really did flip a lot of seats. DeSantis had campaigned for these folks on the school board, and they won. And it's important because the other piece of this, when we're talking about books, it's not just the one that John mentioned. There's a book in Tampa, Florida. The book is called This Book is Gay, and it's for middle schoolers. There's graphic sexual content in it. Want to play a little clip from Will Witt, who is obviously a very well-known author, Gen Z conservative activist, talking about how can a school board allow this.
The kids at these schools are 11 to 13 years old, and it is encouraging them to go on the dating site Grindr. You are opening them up to sexual predators, and you are opening them up to grooming. So I ask you, what to do is to do your job and not to sexualize and indoctrinate children.
I don't know why we have to convince people of this, Aaron, at all.
I know it's really a sad state of affairs when stating the obvious about not showing sexualized material to children somehow seems like a radical ideology, when in fact it's purely what we should be doing, which is protecting children from overly sexualized material. I applaud Will for standing up and showing them the stone cold facts in their face. And I applaud everybody like Kira who steps up and steps in to join their local school boards. In Virginia, it's why we have a Republican governor, is because of the pushback by parents against teachers and this kind of woke ideology of school boards. And in Florida, because of Governor DeSantis, we are going to see more conservative leaning school boards, which is so critical when you continue to see a woke left ideology being perpetrated against students. We have an entire generation of children who are behind in math and reading and are devastated because of COVID. And this is what school boards are focused on. This is where parents should get really, really angry and really, really involved in their school boards.
And one other thing, too, you talked about that. There's some new data out. I think that's what you're referring to, Aaron, after the pandemic, about how far back kids have been set because of they've missed school, but also, too,
fourth graders.
Reports of childhood diabetes, type 2 diabetes in kids is way up too. Kira, we need to talk more about physical education in schools as well, don't we?
Yeah, I mean, physical education and the arts are the things that the unions always seem to cut first. And I think it's just an ideology thing. You have the kids, the longer you have their butts in the seat, that's why they make the school days longer. They add more schooling to early education. The longer you have those butts in seats, that's the longer you have those minds in the seats. And that's the more time you have for indoctrination. Yes, of course, we should be talking about physical education. I mean, that would have been the proper response to the pandemic for children, right? To good health, rather than a vaccine that's unproven and now seems to have a lot of problems, and useless lockdowns punishing our children for a disease that doesn't even really affect them. So, yeah, we obviously should be talking about physical education, math, reading. I'm in California, where these things are on our agenda, school board agendas every day. And yet we are 50th out of 50 states in education outcomes. We are the bottom barrel, and this is the stuff they bother us with every day.
The woman in the arena, our friend Kira Davis. Great to see you, Kira. Aaron, great to see you as well. Thanks so much.
Thank